I fired every bullet I had, but it didn't stop. It never stops. That thing, it knows me. It speaks like them, like my men, like Emily, but it's not her. It's not human. The forest, it's shifting, watching. It doesn't want me to leave. No, that's not her. It's lying. The wind howls through the trees, a restless force weaving between the towering pines. The cabin stands alone, miles of dense forest stretching endlessly in every direction. Isolation. That's what I wanted. That's what I chose. I lean back in my worn-out chair, fingers wrapped around a steaming cup of coffee. The bitter heat doesn't do much to shake off the exhaustion, clinging to my bones. I stare at the flickering flames in the fireplace, watching the shadows twist and stretch along the log walls. Years in the military taught me discipline, control, but out here, in the quiet, there's nothing to fight but my own thoughts. Major Daniel Carter, retired. And now, just a man in a cabin, waiting. A sudden thud outside snaps me to attention, the kind of sound that doesn't belong. Instinct tightens my muscles before reason catches up. My eyes dart to the rifle leaning against the wall. I don't reach for it. Not yet. Probably just a branch breaking under the weight of the wind. Still, my grip tightens around the cup. I glance at my old military watch. The second hand ticks forward, slow, deliberate. I exhale, muttering under my breath. She should be here soon. My voice is rough, edged with a weariness I can't shake. Then, a faint scratching against the cabin's exterior. My breath stills. The sound lingers for a second, just enough to set my nerves on edge. I listen, waiting. Then, silence. I shake my head, forcing a slow breath. The wind. Just the wind. The low hum of an engine cuts through the silence. Faint at first, then growing louder as it winds its way up the empty forest road. I step onto the porch, feeling the cold bite of the night air. The headlights pierce through the trees, twin beams slicing through the darkness like searchlights. A moment later, the car pulls up, its tires crunching over the gravel. My sister's old sedan looks out of place here, too fragile, too temporary, against the weight of the wilderness. The passenger door swings open before the car even fully stops. Emily jumps out, all restless energy and wide eyes. 11 years old, but braver than most. She turns in a slow circle, taking in the towering pines, the endless shadows between them. It's creepy here, she murmurs, half in awe, half uncertain. I smirk, folding my arms. You'll get used to it. My sister steps out next, tugging Emily's small backpack from the trunk. Her eyes land on me, searching. Even in the dim light, I see the hesitation in her face. She doesn't have to say it. I already know what she's thinking. Are you sure you'll be okay? Her voice is soft, careful. I force a smile, one I don't fully feel. Yeah, we'll be fine. She hesitates a second longer before sighing and pulling Emily in for a quick hug. Then, just like that, she's back in the car. The engine rumbles to life, red taillights glowing like distant embers before vanishing into the trees. Now, it's just us. Emily tilts her head up at me, her breath visible in the cold air. So, what do we do for fun? I exhale, rubbing the back of my neck. Not much. The wind picks up, rustling the branches above us. The forest stretches out, quiet, watching. Inside, the cabin is warm, but the silence between us is heavy. The fire flickers in the hearth, casting long shadows that shift against the walls. Emily moves toward the wooden shelf, her fingers grazing the cold metal of old military medals. She picks one up, turning it between her small hands. "You were a soldier?" I pause, my grip tightening around my coffee mug. For a second, I don't answer. Then, keeping my voice even, I say, "Yeah, a long time ago." She looks up at me, curious, but something in my tone tells her not to push. Her eyes drift back to the shelf. This time, she picks up a faded photograph, its edges curled with time. A younger me stands in the center, surrounded by my unit. Brothers in arms, some grinning, some serious. "What happened to them?" she asks softly. I don't answer. Instead, I reach out and gently take the photo from her hands, setting it back in its place. "It's late. Get some rest." Emily frowns but doesn't argue. She turns toward her room, dragging her feet slightly. As she reaches the hallway, she hesitates, then murmurs, "I think I heard you talking in your sleep." I go completely still. My jaw tightens, breath caught somewhere between past and present. "Go to bed, Emily." She disappears into the darkness of the hallway. I stay behind, staring into the fire, watching as the flames twist and dance, until they start to look like figures in the smoke. Night has settled deep over the forest, swallowing the world beyond the cabin in impenetrable darkness. The wind is still, but the crickets chirp, their rhythm off, too fast, too slow, like something is disrupting the natural order. I sit in my chair, staring at the dying embers in the fireplace, eyes heavy with exhaustion. Then, "Uncle Danny?" Emily's small, urgent voice snaps me awake. I turn toward her room just as she steps into the dimly lit hallway, her face pale, eyes wide. Someone's outside. I sit up straighter, my pulse quickening. Grabbing the flashlight from the counter, I make my way to the door. I hesitate for a second, listening. Nothing but the crickets and the occasional rustling of leaves. When I push the door open, the night greets me with emptiness. I step onto the porch, shining the beam of light across the trees. It barely cuts through the dark. Shadows stretch between the trunks, unmoving, undisturbed. Then, a smell hits me, thick, putrid, rotting. My stomach tightens. It's wrong, like something dead has been left out for too long. The wind shifts, carrying a sound from deep in the woods, low, guttural, almost like breathing. I swallow hard. Suddenly, Emily is beside me, gripping my sleeve. I saw someone standing there. She points toward the tree line. My heart pounds as I follow her gaze. Nothing, just the trees. But my hand tightens around the doorframe anyway. The cold air bites at my skin as we trek deeper into the woods. Each step crunches over frost-covered leaves, the sound sharper in the winter silence. Emily hurries beside me, her breath visible in the frigid air. She's bundled in layers, but she's still shivering. "How much farther?" she asks, adjusting the straps on her backpack. "Not far," I reply. "You getting tired?" She shakes her head, stubborn. "Nope." Soon we reach a clearing, a flat stretch of land surrounded by towering trees. It's isolated. No roads, no trails, just us and the wilderness. Perfect. I set down my bag and start unpacking. Emily watches, then mimics me, clumsily rolling out her sleeping bag. "Survival basics," I tell her. "First, always check your surroundings. Look for signs of fresh water, animal tracks, anything useful or dangerous." She nods, fascinated. "What else?" "Always keep your fire going at night. It keeps the cold and the animals away." By the time the campfire is crackling, the sun is gone, and the woods stretch into darkness. The flames flicker, casting long, shifting shadows that make the trees seem alive. Emily hugs her knees, staring into the fire. Do you believe in ghosts? I snort. Ghosts are just stories. She frowns. You didn't answer the question. Before I can respond, a rustling sound comes from beyond the trees. I tense, eyes locked on the tree line. The fire crackles, its glow too weak to reach past the first few trunks. I listen, holding my breath. Nothing. Probably an animal. I glance at Emily. She didn't notice. She yawns, rubbing her eyes. I'm sleepy. Get some rest, I say, voice even. She crawls into her sleeping bag, shifting until she's comfortable. Within minutes, her breathing slows. I stay by the fire, listening, watching. The night stretches on, thick with something I can't name. A distant whisper threads through the trees, slipping into the edges of sleep. Emily stirs, her breath shallow as she blinks awake. Emily. The whisper is soft, almost familiar. She sits up, her small frame barely visible in the dim glow of the dying fire. Beyond the tent, the forest is black, an endless stretch of shadows. Emily. The voice drifts closer, still distant, still unseen. Her heartbeat quickens. She nudges my shoulder. Uncle Danny? I grumble, half awake. What? Someone's calling my name. That wakes me up. I sit up, listening. Silence. Just the wind sighing through the trees, the occasional pop of the fire. I rub my face, exhaling. It's just the wind, Em. Go back to sleep. She hesitates before slowly laying back down, but I can tell she's still stiff, alert. I settle in, adjusting my position, then freeze. A low hiss of static hums from my old military radio. I turn my head toward my rucksack, where the radio sits buried under gear. The knob is off. It shouldn't be on. I sit up fully, reaching for it. The static crackles louder, shifting, warping, until it's not just noise anymore. Move, we're surrounded. They're everywhere. Carter, do you copy? My breath catches. The voices are broken, distorted, but I know them. I know every single one. They're dead. The radio screeches, a ragged scream, a final order shouted into chaos. My hand shoots forward, yanking the battery out. Silence. The fire crackles softly. I stay awake, fingers tight around my hunting knife, eyes locked on the black void of the forest. Something is out there, and it's watching us. Morning light bleeds through the skeletal trees, pale and cold. The fire has burned down to embers, and the air is thin with frost. I stand, stretching the stiffness from my muscles, my fingers still curled from gripping my knife all night. Something was out there, watching. I scan the tree line, my breath fogging in the crisp air. The forest is quiet, too quiet. Emily shuffles out of the tent, rubbing her eyes. Did you sleep? She asks. I ignore the question. Stay close. She frowns but follows as I move toward the trees, eyes sweeping for tracks, broken branches, anything. The air carries a damp, foul smell, something rotting. Then Emily yelps. I spin around as she stumbles back, her shoe sinking into something soft. I don't see it at first. Then I do. A deer carcass, twisted and mangled, its limbs arranged unnaturally. The rotting flesh is split open, the ribs exposed and blackened. Flies buzz, thick and hungry. I step closer, my stomach churning. This isn't just predation. The wounds are clean, deliberate, not clawed or torn, but cut. Emily covers her nose. Did wolves do this? I don't answer. A deep claw mark is carved into the ribs, something unnatural, something wrong. I feel Emily watching me, waiting for an explanation. I grab her wrist, firm but steady. Let's go. She doesn't argue. We head back to camp, but the stench lingers, and so does the unease settling deep in my gut. Something isn't right. And whatever did this, it's still out there. The fire crackles weakly, casting flickering shadows against the tent. Emily sits, hunched over, poking the embers with a stick. She hasn't spoken since we got back from the carcass. Neither have I. The forest feels closer now, the trees looming like silent watchers. The air is thick, heavy, as if the woods themselves are waiting. Emily breaks the silence. "Uncle Danny." Her voice is flat, distant. Sergeant Matthews was always laughing, wasn't he? Right before he... I freeze, my breath catching. She's staring into the fire, her voice casual, too casual. And Corporal Reyes. He kept calling for his mom, even when he knew she wouldn't come. A chill spreads through my chest. My hands clench against my knees. She shouldn't know this. "Emily," I say slowly, my voice low, controlled. "Who told you that?" She tilts her head, finally looking at me. Her bright eyes flicker in the firelight, confused. "They did. Last night." A cold silence falls over the camp. The fire pops, sending sparks spiraling into the dark. The wind dies down, and in the stillness, the forest seems to lean in, listening. I feel it now. We're not alone. I wake up abruptly, the cold biting at my skin. My first instinct is to check on Emily. I turn over, and my chest tightens. Her sleeping bag is empty. The fabric is still neatly unzipped, as if she left willingly. A wave of unease washes over me. "Emily." My voice is hoarse, barely louder than a whisper. Silence. The forest outside is dead quiet. No crickets, no wind, just a suffocating stillness. I climb out of the tent, my breath visible in the freezing air. The campfire is dead, just blackened wood and cold ash. That's when I see them, small footprints leading away from the camp. Emily's. But beside them something else. Hoof prints. I stare at them, my mind fighting against what I'm seeing. They're deep, pressed too perfectly into the frozen ground. Not deer, not human. Something else. Panic claws at my gut, but I force it down. I grab my rifle, sling my flashlight in front of me, and follow the tracks into the woods. The darkness ahead feels different now. Thicker. Watching. And somewhere in that endless black, I swear I hear laughter. I push forward into the trees, my flashlight cutting through the dark. "Emily." My voice is sharp, but the forest swallows it whole. The hoofprints and footprints scatter, splitting into multiple directions. What the hell? My heart pounds. I kneel down, tracing the indentations with my fingers. The snow is still soft, freshly disturbed. She was just here. I stand, gripping my rifle tighter. The wind shifts, carrying something faint. A whisper. "Carter." I freeze. That voice. I know it. Another whisper. "Move, now. They're coming." My breath catches. I spin around, rifle raised, but there's nothing. Just endless black trees stretching into the void. The voices multiply, circling me. Fragmented orders from a battlefield I barely survived. "Stay low. Ambush ahead. Man down. Man down. Carter, respond. Carter." I clamp a hand over my ears, but they don't stop. They're not just echoes. They're here, somewhere, watching. I grit my teeth, shaking my head, trying to push the fear down. I have one mission: find Emily, get out. But as I turn, I realize something sickening. The footprints, Emily's, the hoofprints, they've changed direction. Now, they're leading back toward me. "Uncle Danny, help me." My breath catches. Emily's voice, but not just one. It echoes from all directions, overlapping, twisting. "Uncle Danny, over here, please." I whip around, scanning the trees. My pulse pounds in my ears. Which way? I choose one and move fast, rifle raised, the beam of my flashlight bouncing against the trunks. Then, movement in the shadows. I halt. Figures stand just beyond the reach of my light, half hidden behind trees. Tall, still, unnatural. I squint, and my stomach turns cold. Their faces. I know those faces. Glenn, Rodriguez, Baker, my squad. But their bodies are wrong. Too thin, limbs slightly too long. Their eyes glow dimly in the dark, like an animal's reflection. This isn't real. I aim my rifle. They flicker, distorting. One tilts its head, mouth parting as if to speak, but no sound comes. Then, a deep, wet growl from behind me. I freeze. Not Emily, not my squad. Something else. A low snarl, barely more than a breath. I slowly turn. Scout stands rigid, hackles raised, his body trembling, his ears flatten against his skull, teeth bared at the void. He knows. Then, he lunges, barking, snapping, a blur of fur and fury. But something catches him mid-air. His body jerks, suspended, his bark turning into a choked yelp. I watch, frozen in horror, as something invisible twists him violently, and then rips him apart. A wet, sickening tear. A sharp yelp cut short. Blood splatters across my face. I stagger back, rifle trembling in my grip. The forest falls silent. The figures in the trees are gone. But I know I'm not alone. Something is here, and it's playing with me. My hands tremble around the rifle's grip, breath coming in ragged gasps. The forest is too quiet. The unnatural silence weighs heavy, pressing against my skull. I take a staggered step back, and suddenly my boot hits something solid. I stumble, catching myself on the damp earth. Blinking down, I see the edge of a wooden sign, half buried in the dirt, its surface rotted and covered in moss. Kneeling, I brush away the decay, revealing faded letters. My pulse quickens. It's part of an old structure, its skeletal remains hidden beneath the overgrowth. Looking up, my eyes adjust to the dark outline of charred beams and collapsed walls, what's left of a burned-down cabin. The trees around it aren't normal. Their bark is carved, deep, deliberate etchings twisting up their trunks. I trace one with my fingers, feeling the deep grooves forming a horned figure. More symbols appear, grotesque depictions of hollow-eyed people, lost souls, encircling the goat man. A weight settles in my chest. This thing, it doesn't hunt like an animal. It lures, it waits, it mimics. A breath brushes my ear. Uncle Danny. I stumble into the clearing, my boots grinding against damp earth, breath coming in sharp, ragged gulps. My rifle is slick with sweat as I tighten my grip. The forest feels wrong, too still, too expectant. Then, the stench hits me. It's overpowering. Rotting meat, wet fur, coppery blood. It clings to the air, thick and nauseating. I swallow bile, blinking against the burning in my nose. The silence presses in. Then, movement. Something stirs in the trees, shifting between the trunks like a shadow learning how to walk. Too tall, too thin. Its limbs twitch in unnatural angles, joints popping as if they're adjusting to a shape that doesn't fit. Then, it steps forward. My stomach drops. The thing is grotesque. Half man, half beast, its flesh stitched together from stolen shapes. Its torso is human-like, but the skin is stretched too tight, veins dark beneath pale flesh. The arms, too long, ending in clawed fingers, drag slightly as it moves. Its legs bend wrong, the knees reversed like a deer's, and its head. A massive set of twisted antlers stretch upward, jagged like broken branches. The face below them shifts, flickering between forms. I see Sanchez's face for a split second, then Murphy's, then something inhuman. Its mouth lags behind the change, stretching too wide, too full of jagged teeth. Then, it locks onto me. Its lips curl into something almost like a smile. And then, it speaks.
Daniel,
The voice is wrong, familiar. Emily's voice, but layered beneath it. Something deep, distorted, ancient. My pulse hammers in my ears. My rifle shakes in my hands. I know what this is, and it knows me. The whispers start immediately, not from one direction, but everywhere, circling me, inside me. Sanchez's voice. You let me die, Major. Murphy's voice. Why didn't you save us? Then, my own voice. You knew this was coming. And then, Emily's laughter. I grit my teeth, gripping my rifle tighter. You're not real, I growl through clenched teeth. But my hands tremble. My pulse pounds in my skull. The forest warps at the edges, memories bleeding through. The sand, the gunfire, the screams. Then, it moves. The goatman surges forward too fast. I barely react in time, squeezing the trigger. The rifle kicks. The shot echoes. The bullet slams into its chest. Nothing. Another shot. Nothing. The thing barely flinches. A clawed hand swings. I dodge, barely, feeling the wind of it slice past my face. I retreat, mind racing, instincts kicking in. This isn't a fight I can win head on. I move fast, setting up hasty traps, tripwires, baited branches. I lure it into a makeshift snare, knife at the ready. The trap snaps, but the goatman just tears through it, unbothered. Then, impact. A brutal strike sends me flying, crashing into a tree. The bark cracks beneath me. My ribs scream. I drop my rifle. The air is gone from my lungs. My vision swims, blood pooling in my mouth. The forest sways as my body struggles to move. Above me, the goatman looms, its shape flickering, shifting. A dozen faces staring down, my own face among them. I force myself to breathe, to move, but my body is broken. My mind, on the verge of collapse. And the thing just watches. The goatman stops. Its grotesque, flickering form retreats, melting into the darkness between the trees. The sudden absence of attack is worse than the violence. Then, Emily's voice. Uncle Danny, please. I whirl around. She's there, shaking, pale, tear-streaked, her wide, terrified eyes locked onto mine. Then, another voice. The same voice. I spin the other way. Another Emily stands just across the clearing. Identical. Same trembling hands. Same desperate stare. It's me. Don't listen to her. The first Emily cries. No, Danny, run. It's lying. The second Emily sobs. My grip tightens on my rifle. My breath comes sharp and shallow. This is it. The goatman's last trick. One of them is real. One of them is not. But which? I stare at them, listening, watching, searching. But they're perfect. Every instinct is screaming, every nerve firing. But doubt chokes me. My hands tremble as I raise the gun. Both Emilys step forward. Both reach for me. Both are crying. One is real. One is not. The moment snaps. One Emily lunges. I pull the trigger. I stumble through the trees. Each step is agony. Each breath is fire. The first light of dawn creeps over the treetops, painting the sky in muted oranges and purples. The forest feels different in the daylight. Less monstrous, less alive, but not safe. Never safe. I drag myself forward, my legs weak, my vision swimming. The warm trickle of blood seeps through my torn shirt. Deep claw marks burn across my ribs. My hands tremble as I press against the wound, my breath ragged. The memories from the night swirl in my head. The voices, the shifting faces, the impossible choice. Did I win? Or did I just survive? The cabin emerges through the thinning trees, a familiar silhouette, a promise of safety. For a brief moment, relief crashes over me. Then, a whisper, a single word. Danny. I freeze. The cabin stands untouched. The world is waking up. But deep in my gut, something is wrong. I force myself forward, my pulse hammering in my ears. Because there's still one question I don't have an answer to. Who did I bring back with me? I stagger toward the cabin, my legs barely holding me up. My breath comes in ragged gasps, my ribs screaming with every step. Then, I see her. Emily. She stands on the porch, unharmed, bathed in the soft glow of dawn. My heart clenches, my throat tightens. I rush forward, my body weak but driven by pure relief. Emily. I breathe, reaching out as if she might disappear. She smiles softly, too softly. You're back, Uncle Danny. Tears threaten to spill. I almost collapse then and there. I thought I lost you. Emily tilts her head, just slightly, just enough. You didn't. A pause. I was waiting for you. My stomach tightens, the way she says it, the cadence. The forest behind me is too quiet, too still. The air is heavy, pressing against my skin, like something unseen is holding its breath. And for the first time, I don't feel like I made it out. I feel like I brought something back with me. I force myself to shake off the creeping unease. Exhaustion. That's all it is. I drop to my knees in front of Emily, cupping her face in my trembling hands. My heart pounds as I scan her eyes, searching, pleading for something, anything that feels wrong. Are you hurt? Did it touch you? My voice cracks, raw and desperate. Emily smiles, software innocent. No, Uncle Danny, but... She leans in, close, and whispers, a phrase, a sentence that shouldn't be possible. Something buried deep in my past. Something only the goat man would know. My body locks up. My breath catches. The blood drains from my face. The realization hits like a tidal wave, drowning me in ice-cold horror. I brought the wrong thing back.